Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us live this morning. We are excited to be here to discuss next generation facilities, exploring broadcast facilities and real estate for the future. My name is Sal DeMaio, and I work out of the Qvest New York office, and I will be your moderator for today. I'll be joined by Paul Charleston from our UK office, as well as Éric Minoli from our Canada office, who both have extensive experience in broadcast relocation, not just in the US market, but globally. We'd like to ask our audience to please put in the chat where you're tuning in from as well. I would also like to let everyone know if you have any questions throughout the entire webinar, please feel free to put them in the chat even as we're speaking. We'll make sure to address them at the end for you. So now let's meet our panelists for today. First, I'd like to introduce Paul Charleston. Paul's a principal in our International Broadcast Integration Department out of the UK. Paul, thanks for joining us, and it's great to have you here today.
Good morning, Sal. Thank you for having me. So I've spent kind of 16 years in the broadcast industry, looking after everything from operational engineering, outside broadcast, through to major transformations and project engineering for vendors and broadcasters in the international marketplace.
Well, thank you for joining us again. Next, I'd like to introduce Éric Minoli. Éric is one of our senior program managers out of the Canada office. Éric, great to have you here as well, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much, Sal. So my name is Éric Minoli. I have worked in the broadcast industry for the past 30 years. I serve for various role positions from CIO to CEO across the world. And I really focus on helping broadcasters to drive transformation for the future, including like relocation to different facilities.
Well, it's great to have you here and look forward to our discussions. And like I said, my name is Sal DeMaio. I've been in the broadcast industry for a little over 24 years, working in pretty much every aspect of operations and engineering. So I'm excited to talk today on really what's some of the driving factors as well as the opportunities that come from relocation. So let's start with that actually first. The driving factors have changed over the last few years, especially of what's really causing companies to look to relocate. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about, some things, such as designing or downsizing our footprint, streamlined workflows, remote capabilities, new generational workforce, and how that's really changing what the way we work in the broadcast industry. Paul, if you can really just talk a little bit about your experience with that and what you see the driving factors now compared to maybe a few years ago as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sal. So what it really comes down to is legacy. So we had all of these broadcasters who set up very legitimately many years ago and have since become major brands. But when they started their journey as broadcasters, or perhaps when they had their last major change, there were very different technologies, personnel, and locations that needed to be there, where you had to consider a whole scenic department or perhaps a TV antenna in your back garden. Now people want a smaller and more agile space. Coupled to that, the changes in the funding model around broadcast, the fact that the CFOs are looking for money everywhere, and all of a sudden they look beneath their feet and they see an old building that's full of old cables, technology that's not suitable, and really an environment that no one wants to work in. But there's also worth, hundreds of millions of dollars perhaps, or in different parts of the world that can be handed off back to the government who originally had it, or perhaps can be reutilized into housing or real estate to the profit of the broadcaster or the corporation that they're a part of. Add into that all of the merging that we see in the different environments, and really they're looking at the property portfolio coupled with the fact that nobody likes the legacy that they have and really starting to think of things moving forwards. Of course, that was then massively exacerbated by COVID and the changes to the work environment that came with that.
Yeah, it definitely changed things overnight, you can say, in the broadcast industry, especially in that, remote, being able or having to have the capability to have a remote workforce. And it seems that it's kind of staying around since then. Éric, if you can kind of talk about some of the differences of maybe globally to US of the driving factors of looking to relocate.
I think like Paul said earlier, like the COVID was a huge driving factor. What's not possible on the tech side before COVID, like for example, being able to edit remotely, suddenly within like 24 hours was possible, and the broadcaster really had to adjust to that. If you didn't want to go to black on air, you had to produce content, so you really had to adjust quickly to the COVID situation. And this means that like we saw exponentially the capability of being working from home, not only for finance people or HR people, but also for people really inside the production, like the PAs, like the editors, like everybody. So this really impact. And I think one of the thing too is like the new generation that's coming on the market. The Gen Z uh, don't really dream about spending 9 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday sitting in an office. They want the flexibility to be able to work from where they are. As the same way they're consuming content, by the way, because you can consume content anywhere. So I think this was one of the big impact. If you want to be able, especially in North America, where there is a shortage of employees, if you want to attract these people, you have to adjust to what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's it's interesting as the new workforce is coming in. We've seen this kind of come around again and again. How it definitely each generation changes a little bit of how we work, and which results in changes of where we're distributing. In the U.S., we see a lot of things such as expensive real estate and people really wanting to downsize that. Really, tax incentives is a big part as well in the U.S. I know in the East Coast, it's while a lot of people are looking to move to get to a state that does offer that. So talking about the driving factors, well, there's the next step of that is really what are some of the challenges, but as well opportunities that come from that, because there are a lot. As you all said, having an older building that's really kind of prohibits you of doing certain things, maybe opening up certain walls, creating bigger studio space. Maybe getting rid of what was office space that now can be more production space. I think a lot of companies are looking to pretty much look at cost and say it's almost cheaper now to start over while I'm doing that downsizing or getting those tax incentives. So Paul, if you can just really talk about some of the challenges as well as opportunities that come with a relocation of a broadcast facility.
Well, I think it all really does start with the opportunity, right? It's a great moment of reflection where previously projects and changes are evaluated from maybe a technical perspective or by the creative possibilities that it unlocks, or perhaps the finances that need to be done. It's an opportunity to think about all of them in the same state. So not just where are we as a company, where do we want to show ourselves, but what is our highest value proposition into the marketplace? How do we maintain our individuality and the success that we have and actually accelerate that with a new location? And the challenge to that is that you need to bring the people along. Not just the people who are operational, not just the people who might have an impact to where they're going to work, but also to get rid of some of the legacy thinking that comes along with a building. When a building is made for purpose, it then starts to affect that purpose. It's no longer thinking about it as, well, this is Edit 11, that is for this specific purpose, therefore it only needs this equipment. Instead saying, what does Edit 11 achieve for us? Do we need that to be in an edit suite at all? Or if we do, what does that space really represent to us? And is it of the right value to the value that we get from our output? So what we try and say is thinking about it from an end-to-end perspective, thinking about what the business is trying to achieve by that relocation, and then breaking down to the granular requirements that that building needs to facilitate, rather than just looking to lift and shift, or perhaps even worse, lose some of the individuality that you have in the new location by compromising too far.
Yeah, all great points. Éric, can you kind of give a perspective of what that, the differences maybe, or even just some of the different challenges that come up in the U.S. as well as opportunities uh, compared to the, globally maybe?
So I think one of the big opportunity, as you know, Sal, like the broadcast landscape in the past 2 decades, past decade even, changed drastically, especially regarding like the OTT and all the different streaming platform that we need to feed. So there is a urgent need of aligning the strategy of the organization to the operation. Now, on the operational side, you really need to have a highly flexible environment to be able to adjust to whatever the strategy and the content and the distribution platform required. So the change of facility really help moving forward. It's kind of leverage the focus on what does the strategy of the company is now, but also what the strategy will be in 5 years. And one of the things too is, like Paul mentioned earlier, you have a lot of legacy equipment, right? That maybe not adapted to what you need to do now. And the move in the new facility really help you to streamline all the technology and to make sure that, yes, I'm ready for what I need to do now, but I have the flexibility to be able to respond to the strategy and the operation for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think, as you said, like the next 5 years are going to be interesting in this industry as things are changing very rapidly. You know, interesting to see, Paul, if you can kind of comment on the differences of some of those challenges really in the global market that you're seeing, from country to country, and just touch on those a little bit, seeing that we are a global company at Qvest. Just, any of the experience you've seen with that.
Definitely. And again, it's not just about challenge, it's about opportunity as well. If I think about the deliveries we've done from New York all the way to Sydney, Australia, each market is very individual. As Éric was saying earlier about tax incentives in the US, this is a great driver that people are utilizing to kick off these transformations. And there are other markets that do that. There are other markets where there are governments who are causing relocations. And again, it's an opportunity to transform, to think about what you're doing and to do it better, or to do it in a way that adds more value to the viewer. But there's also a lot, especially in Europe, of thought about the greater environment, climate change, trying to work towards net zero, and avoiding the possible financial problems that are going to come with that. Certainly some markets are building in much more restrictive legal frameworks and a lot more cost into businesses. A good example is energy spiking in Europe, where in some cases the least cost of that new building pales in insignificance to the electricity cost unless you start farming out to cloud or building very thoughtful data centers within your areas. So really, it is very dependent on the different marketplace. Some are using some concepts to build the reason for change, and others are using it to protect against possible threat.
Thank you for that. It's definitely interesting with us, like I said, being a global company, how it really changes from market to market, and some of them are subtle and some are major. So with knowing all of that and knowing that we are global and we do have customers all over the world, how is Qvest really helping our clients, not only take use of these opportunities, but address these challenges? If you could, Paul, maybe talk about it, and then Éric, maybe comment on some of the things that you've worked on and you've seen as well.
So I think the key to how we work is that we're an end-to-end business. We're not simply here to do the old terrible SI job where we come in and run some cables and run away and leave you with a big mess. We're there to be in partnership. with these kind of changes, like we said, there are the creative needs of a new location, there are the technology changes that are going to come with that, and then there's the business drivers that really underlie that. By creating a partnership instead of an RFP based approach, where it's simply about bidding to make a technical or physical change, we really try and involve ourselves in what the business is trying to achieve, and looking at that value proposition, understanding that the business only exists to facilitate its customers, and then really using that focus across the whole transformation journey, making sure that the people are aligned with the way that we're going, that the technologies are then underpinning it rather than defining it, and then making sure that the whole thing is resilient and operationally effective. And that's really the expertise we bring.
Éric, if you can kind of talk about how we really are helping clients achieve that financial as well as operational gains while addressing these challenges.
So for me, really, it's not about, like Paul said, technology. We really have like what I'm calling a 360-degree approach, where you have like the 3Ds of like the people, the process, and then at the end the technology. And really, what's driving for me the process is the strategy and the vision. And usually, when I'm start with a client, the first thing I ask is, can I see your vision and your strategic plan? Can I go through it? So because I need to understand, this is going to inspire me to be able to build a plan, a transition plan for you. And it's not really, when we're thinking about the move, it's not at all about moving people from place A to place B. It's about transforming the organization. And it's really to start a new era. And you can leverage this to be able to review completely like your process. One of the key things is really make sure that all the people are on board, from the executive, from the CEO at the top, to all the way along the line. And the goal is really first to support like the executive team to make sure that the strategy, the vision, and the operation are aligned, and also to be able to listen to the voice inside the company, because everybody have always great ideas about how to improve things, and I think our role is really to listen and to map everything out and align, to make sure that when the move occurs, or even before the move, that when we land in the new space, it's kind of a new start for the organization.
Interesting. With Qvest really, as Paul said, being an end-to-end solution provider and not just looking to do that lift and shift, but really bringing in a team that's going to understand those business needs. I think this is a big differentiator for us in the market, in the traditional SI sense. For someone that's worked in a traditional SI before, taking this bottom-up approach that we take to really figure out what the customer is doing today, where their pain points are, and help use that to then develop what those future requirements are going to be, and how we can kind of make maximize the potential with this move that comes with so many other big, huge changes, as you both said. Where do you guys see Qvest really, the way that we approach things, making a difference with these customers with that, from the traditional, let's just say, approach?
Sorry, Sal, I talked over you. I think the key is really about how we choose to engage. A good partnership, I keep saying partnership because it's how we feel about that. A good partnership is based on a mutual fit. So again, like I say, instead of some RFP process where there's a judgment of multiple people against a set of criteria, instead it's about coming in and understanding what you do, where you see your value, where you see your differentiators, where you want to get to. Again, we're going to keep saying that because myself and Éric, we keep thinking that way, because two different organizations, two different broadcasters are incredibly different and want to be incredibly different. We can't come in with a blueprint or a map and say, do all of these things and then you'll have a successful transformation. Who are the people? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the different departments who are going to craft this? Do you want to bring back in-house your creative product, whether that's graphics, set design, camera work, or do you want it to be a more engineering-based remote production setup? Everyone is so independent and different, and we know that that's the value that we have to come in with you and help you to realize your future there. So really, it's about coming in and having a conversation, understanding each other, and then choosing whether to go forward or not. While we would love everyone in the world to be working with us and we believe we bring immense value, sometimes it might not be the right fit. So we want to be there having that conversation and really understanding where we can help you. And again, different broadcasters require different things. Some have amazing procurement departments who are going to work on all of that piece. Others might want some help in that area. That's absolutely fine. We're more bothered about the outcome, about driving your transformation and helping your business to achieve its potential.
Perfect. Yeah, I know, as I said, working in for a few different SIs, and when I started with Qvest, this approach was definitely a little different for me, but at the end, really seeing the value in doing all that you just said, of really understanding the current business needs and really making it more that partnership to help justify the whole business case for what you're doing, whether it's a move, whether it's an upgrade to your infrastructure. It's really today, especially because there's so many different ways to do the same thing, where before it was kind of like, maybe the equipment was different, but the process was the same. Today, that even the process can be so different from customer to customer that we really need to take this bottom-up approach to understand how they work, instead of trying to force something that is a past job that we've done or a past process that we've worked in, whether it was personally or with another customer, but make it more about what they're trying to do and put their stamp on it, as you said. I definitely think that's a huge differentiator for us as a company, in the SI piece as well as the consulting part of it, because we are we do take a consultative approach in our engagements. If Éric and Paul, if you guys can just talk about, how people do get started with Qvest. So how do we make contact? How do we engage? What's the best way to engage with our customers?
Any way that works for you. We are all media and entertainment specialists. Everything that we do is driven by broadcasters and their products. So come and have a chat with us. Tell us what you're doing that's interesting. Tell us some of the problems that you might have. Where can you get hold of us? IBC show in Amsterdam in September, we'll be there. NAB, we're there. CABSAT, anywhere in the world where there's a trade show, you will find one of our representatives. But don't wait till then. Please just reach out. Anyone on this call, all of our contact information, I believe, is available. Just start the chat. We are happy to hear from you, and we would love to hear what your challenges are.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for for today, and it's been a lot of great information. So I think now we can go into some questions that we may have. So in the live Q&A. So let's see what we have in there. All right. So we have one from Andrea. So if you are not planning to make a cinema scripted, what are the requirements for next gen real estate requirements? Who would like to take this one?
You want to go, Paul? And I can follow.
Yeah. So when you're kind of talking about cinema scripted, so more on the drama side of things. So, I mean, I would generally make the differentiation between narrative-based production offline and kind of live transmission-based broadcasting. So if you're not planning to make cinema or scripted, I'm going to assume you mean live. So my key areas would be a real estate that really influences our people, gives them the idea of that energy that's required for those kind of productions, is also fully capable of the connectivity requirements that you're going to have, somewhere nice and modern that meets power and HVAC requirements that you're going to bring in there, whilst technology and the on-site loading is reducing over time. The items that are critical are still on site, and that does bring its own challenges. Certainly where we're in more historic city centres, obviously myself being in London, it's a problem we often have, trying to get the right amount of power, drill through walls that are hundreds of years old and things like that for those locations. But equally, we have to put that effort in, because that's exactly where we get the most creative, top tier staff to really produce the valuable content and show our specifics for a lot of our broadcasters.
Yeah, if I may add, Sal, to that,
Sure.
one of the big challenge, in fact, when you're working with scripted is mostly like storage for like scenics, props, wardrobe, all that thing. Like, and you have to keep it for the continuity, obviously, of the shooting. I think like one of the trigger is to have a good understanding, like first if you're doing live or not live content, because this is going to be a big change. And for me, one of the things that if you're not doing like cinema or scripted, it's really to find the right balance between remote versus in-house. If you're working in news, for example, I will say most of the people can work remotely. So it's to build also the infrastructure to balance like the cloud aspects and the in-house aspects, and really to look at also the way you organize the space, because if you look at your floor plan, actually maybe like everybody's in an office. As you know, like the new trend since like few years now, it's like open space and be able to have the flexibility to have the whole people coming together. So it's really to think when you're looking at your real estate environment, like how do you want the team to communicate? Which team have to be next to each other to make sure that you optimize the way they are working? So it's not only, it's also about like how do you logistically place the people in the work environment, and also how do you create the dynamic with like people working remotely versus the people who are working in house.
Thank you. So Paul, if you can take this one, what are some of the key steps to planning on a new facility, and what are some of the key building blocks?
I mean, the first is discovery. We have to go through that idea and that alignment process. What are the outputs required, and how does that turn into granular requirements? Now, that's going to sound really dry and really boring, but where we really use that is to break down that legacy. We know that we need live support. We know that we need edit bays. We know that we need production galleries. But classically, people say, okay, well, we'll stick all the screens over there. Okay, well, how many screens and why? And when you start really pulling that apart and saying to people, what are you actually kind of working on? What do you really need to see? Oh, we need to see that. Why do you need to see that? Because. Okay, let's get into because. And then let's start to really kind of put that together and say, okay, support is one area, editing is another area, storage and data center is another area. And really starting to understand what each of those businesses need for the future rather than need to replicate what they're doing now. So granular discovery, documentation, adaptation, and transformation.
All right. Éric, why don't you take this one? What change management considerations do you make when managing a next-gen real estate move?
So there is something that I always say, like it's about the timing. One of the key things is you always want to be proactive and not in reaction. And this means that you don't plan a move like in few months. It can take like several years. And for me, one of the key aspects is really make sure that everybody is on board. And you might want to have like a top-down way to approach it. But if you are inclusive with like the people, and if you are inclusive, like listening to them, this will be very helpful. On the change management side, I think there is like really like few aspects to take into consideration. Communication is going to be key. And when I'm saying communication, it's internal communication, obviously. It can be like a direct communication when you're thinking of a specific group, but also how do we make sure that everybody embrace this new project, and how do you make sure that the communication, like as the executive level, also like they're supportive of this. So the communication is one of the first aspects. The change management, the training is going to be key. Because when you're thinking about a real estate move and a new facility, it's not only, like I said earlier, moving one person to one place to another, but it's also maybe change of process, change of equipment. So this means that you have several layers of training that needs to happen from, yes, I need to learn that new piece of equipment, but also I need to understand where are my colleagues now located and how much time I will need to achieve that task. One of the simple example, maybe now you have the wardrobe for the host, which is like in the same office space than you. Maybe in the new building, the wardrobe will be at a different location. So all the process and workflow will have to change because of that.
Thank you. Definitely a lot to consider with outside of just the technical and just the technical operational piece when making these decisions. Paul, if you can address how do media companies ensure a smooth transition of operations and minimize disruptions for viewers and stakeholders during a broadcast center relocation?
Well, I'll split that in two. Any relocation is unsuccessful if the viewership notice, apart from the first time that you go into the new studio. So a lot of the key points that we've kind of touched upon previously are in there, taking people along for the journey so that none of it is a surprise, ensuring that training is in place, and then accepting that there is going to be dual running, there is going to be the need for media transition, but then utilizing all of these fantastic new tools we have. If cloud has become our DR, then we can move workloads dynamically within the software layer, and actually it doesn't matter where people are sat. So if we've done well enough in transitioning across, some of the old operations are already moved across, but some of the new operations can be handled at the old location, for example, or perhaps the secondary location takes the workload during the transitional phase, and we skill up in that way. But it's really key. There's very few circumstances where somebody can turn off a station for 2 months and then turn it back on again. All I can think is a couple of sports federations with real downtime, but the reality is that even they don't want to lose that time of production or pre-production. So it's all going to be about layering and tiering your planning so that from day one of perhaps that multi-year project, you've brought along everybody who's going to be in that new location. And when they move, it feels like home away from home.
Yeah, it sounds like it really comes back to that change management and being able to, help the customers again with not just the operational, but every piece of it. So when people do get there, like you said, they are comfortable and feel like it's, business as usual. Éric, if you can take this last question of what are the average size of the studios you are seeing being built in this environment for TV drama production specifically?
So I mean, it really depends of what type of TV drama you're producing, and by that I mean, like, I don't really see a big change for the same series, for example, in the change of the aspect of the studio size per se. I worked on project that we're looking at a million square feet, for example, for the overall building to be able to move into the facility with like several studios. But what I'm seeing more and more when you're building a new facility, and this is including, in fact, TV drama production, is on top of a studio space where you're going to produce your content, you also build some flex space or some specific area where you can shoot some vodcasts, for example, or you can shoot some specific content. Maybe not with like broadcast camera, but you can even use an iPhone if you want. But that space is set up specifically with like good lighting, with a great backdrops or background to be able to do an interview, for example, of one of a character at the end of a shoot. And then social media people will use that and will leverage that content to be able to do some marketing and communication piece.
Thank you. Well, that's going to wrap up our questions for today. If we did not get your question, please feel free to reach out to us and ask away, and we can definitely have someone respond to you and have a conversation. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I'd like to thank our panelists for contributing. If you'd like to learn more about Qvest and our services, please scan the QR code or just reach out to us directly. And again, just thank you everyone for joining. And if you didn't get a chance to watch this live, it will be up on our YouTube channel shortly. So thank you again, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you to you,
Thanks,
Sal.
Sal.
Have a good day.